My dear participants, today topic for this topic of this session is river hydraulics addressing scour and sediment problem. It will be delivered by Dr. H. Prashant Reddy, Associate Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Kharagpur. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and despite your busy schedule, for accepting our invitation and coming forward to give this lecture. Before your session starts, I request student volunteer Pratyusha to introduce Dr. H. Prashant Reddy sir to the participants of this workshop.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes.
Good afternoon, one and all. It gives me immense pleasure to take the honor of introducing you all to the guest speaker of the session, Dr. H. Prashant Reddy Garu. Having done his BTech degree from NIT Kurukshetra, Prashant Reddy Garu has done his PG in Hydraulics and Water Resource Engineering from IIT Madras. The reputed guest has done his PhD from IIT Madras in Hydraulics and Water Resource Specification. Sir has fellowships in University of South Carolina, USA, University of Windsor, Canada. Sir has expertise knowledge in modeling of unsteady flows in closed conduits, modeling networks, flow assurance in pipelines, GIS applications in water resource engineering, modeling of open channel flows, modeling of sediment transport, hydrodynamics of rivers. Has published a book along with Mr. Brinal and Mr. Kaushik. He's contributed for 10 internationally reputed journals. Esteemed speaker is also contributing as a reviewer for journals of Hydraulics Engineering ASCE, Hydraulics Research Taylor and Francis, Acta Geophysica Springer, Sediment Research Elsevier, Irrigation Drainage ASCE, and is a member of IAHR and a member of ASCE. Sir has contributed for 11 collaborations and affiliations. Sir has served as a thesis advisor for 3 doctoral students and 4 more to add to his contributions and graduated 10 MTech students. Sir has acted as a principal supervisor for a project sponsored by SRIC, a whooping amount of 26,40,000, and as a co-investigator for a project sponsored by SERB DST with a budget of 18,40,680 rupees. We are privileged to have you here, sir. We extend a warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Pratyusha.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Srinivas Garu. So it's my pleasure to give a talk on this. Okay, so may I start now?
Yes, sir, please start. Okay. You can start now.
Dear participants, good afternoon. I am Dr. Prashant Reddy. I am an associate professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Kharagpur. So today I am going to talk on river processes and morphology. Okay. So these are major contents of my presentation: a river journey and its stages, and upstream moving waterfall, fishways, bank erosion, bridges cover, and sediment transport. Okay. So rivers usually begins in mountains, because in mountains river starts as a gullies. Okay, they collect water from rain and as well as snow, and these gullies meet and they form tributaries. You see at the beginning of this river, these are tributaries, and these tributaries they confluence and they become a river. And you see that it has got different stages. Okay, in the hilly regions, mountain regions, where it is it flows through a steep gradient. Then in the middle region, it's a gentler gradient and almost flat gradient near the sea. So the mountain that stretch, it is called as Young River, and so since the water flows with high velocity, so it cuts mountains and hills, so it develops V-shaped valleys. These are very deep valleys. And the mature rivers, that is in the mid-level. Okay, I mean, once the gradient becomes a little flat, then it is a mature river. Okay, so here it has got a widened valleys, and bank erosion takes place instead of bank cutting. So next, old rivers. So these are, we can say that in the plains. Okay, here they have got the width is very large, and they meanders and also forms deltas and levees. Okay, so you can see that in the youthful stage, it has got a deep valley, and in mature stage, so it is still deep, but it's not as deep as in youthful stage. Okay, and you can see here a wider floor, and in the old stage, it is very flat. I mean, the depth of river is less, whereas width is very large. So you can see that there's a middle portion where that river flows, and in the flood season, water flows over these flood banks. So initially, in the youthful stage, so it cuts this deep valley, but since the slopes are very vertical, slopes are very steep, so due to weathering, it forms like a V-shaped valley. Okay, and whatever these banks eroded, so that will be uh, transported as a sediment and deposited elsewhere. So finally, it forms this V-shaped valley. Okay. So in the hilly regions, because it passes through hard rock, and sometimes it cannot erode this hard rock, so it will form like a zigzag course, and these are interlocking spurs. So if you see any of our rivers like Ganges or Brahmaputra river, so you can see in the mountainous region, river goes like a zigzag fashion with interlocking spurs, and the valley is also quite deep. So in the mature stage, okay, so now the slope is little less. So here river meanders. So what is meandering? So in meandering, the river forms like a S-shaped geometry. So what happens? The river cuts outer bank, and it deposits that sediment in the inner bank. So what happens? The rivers and pools develop, and finally, with the time, so it forms like a S-shaped S-shaped pattern, and with the time these bends become sharper. Okay, I'll explain. So you can see that here in this right side figure, uh, on the outer bank, pool will be developed, and at the inner bank, rifle will be developed. So these are the top view of these top view of meandering rivers. Okay, so for to form this kind of meandering rivers take thousands of years, and so you can see that finally this bends becomes very sharp, and once it becomes very sharp, river try to reduce the distance. Okay, so then it cuts. Okay, it shortcuts, and by shortcutting, so it forms Oxbow Lake. So you can see here, earlier it was like this, but now river cut short its route so that there is a lake formed. So in this figure, you can see that this is the inner bank. So in the inner bank, sediment is deposited. Okay, so this is called as a refill. And at the outer bank, here it is very deep. So you can see this meandering river. So it has got a wavelength. Okay, so this lambda shows the wavelength, and this curvature of this river. So it is given with radius r, and it has gone at an amplitude. Okay, so you can see various cross sections along the river. So here you can see it is not yet meandered. So meandering is started here. So you can see that at the outer bank there is a deep cut, and at the inner bank there is a shallow depth, and similarly at the next curve. So you can see that at here it is a outer bank, and you can see it's very deep here. So in India also, if you see that Hooghly River near Kolkata, so river is meandering, and it is continuously cutting the land. So recently there was a problem because one apartment complex is very close to the river bank, and river bank is, I mean, eroded, being eroded because of this meandering, and now state government is taking efforts to secure that bank. Okay, and so you see that this is the meandering river, and you can see there is a floodplain. Okay, so these are the floodplain, because when high flow takes place in rainy season, so this entire area will be flooded. But during the low flow times, river is passing in this blue line, and these banks are river banks, and generally wherever this meandering is cutting this bank, this is a steep cliff. Okay, generally steep cliffs formed here. So those steep cliffs, they are called as river cliff. Okay, and since because river is transporting sediment from the mountainous region, because in the mountainous region it is mainly rock formations, but this river it flows with velocity, and it has the ability to weather these rocks, and these rocks are pulverized. Okay, so they become sand, and also it picks up organic material while flowing. So sand and organic material that is this river bed. Okay, so this is called as alluvial deposits, and since it has got a mixture of sediments, fine and gravel, and then organic material, so therefore it is very fertile, this alluvial. So later on, because river is changing its course, this land will be useful for agricultural. So these are all, that's why if you look at this soil adjacent to this river Ganges is very fertile, because though that soil is transported by river through millions of years from the upper reaches. So this is, as I mentioned, it is a floodplain. Okay, so this floodplain consists alluvium. Okay, this is very fertile soil. So in the old stage, that is once river enters its old stage, that means few I mean, maybe few hundred kilometers down or tens of kilometers down this point, river meets the ocean. Okay, so this is a plain land, and here the water velocity will be low. So since it has velocity is low, its sediment carrying capacity is low. So therefore, the river deposits sediments in this old stage. So by forming levees and delta. So you know the Godavari and Krishna rivers, when they join Bay of Bengal, so they form deltas. Not only, I mean, it's not restricted to Godavari and Krishna. So most of these our east flowing rivers, they form deltas. The Mahanadi, including Mahanadi. So this is how this Oxbow Lake is created, is shown in this figure. River forms this meandering, and the curve becomes sharper and sharper. So finally, because river try to take a shortcut, okay, because of not a because of frictional, because it try to reduce the friction. So I mean frictional slope. So therefore the river cuts this narrow portion. So therefore it reduces its length. So therefore the frictional slope will be less. So when it cuts this narrow portion, then this part, it is called as Oxbow Lake. So you can see that here it's shown in this figure. So river cuts this neck, and therefore the river again, it since it's carrying sediment, so it closes this loop. So therefore this loop formed as Oxbow Lake. So there are many Oxbow lakes in the world, in many countries. If you search in Google, you can get the history of Oxbow lakes in various countries. So finally, river is reaching the sea. You see that it is forming a delta here. Okay, so river is divided into small distributaries, and in between distributaries there is islands. Okay, so these islands are called as deltas because these are created by the sediment transported by this river, and it is very fertile. So these deltas are very important for agricultural production. So we can say that these rivers are lifeline for humans, because we get drinking water and water for agricultural, and as well as we receive deltas for agricultural production. And you see that here levees are formed. So levee is nothing but it is a river bank. Okay, so these rivers are carrying sediment, so it is deposited on the banks of this river, and these are called as levees. So in the way river creates waterfalls. Okay, so if you look at Niagara Falls, which is between two lakes. Okay, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. The elevation between the two lakes is very high. The water flows from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, and I forgot the river name. Since the elevation difference between these two lakes is too high, the waterfall is created. I mean, it's naturally created. How these waterfalls are created? Because when the water, see, there is a hard rock and below a soft rock, and water is flowing over hard rock to softer rock. So due to this potential energy of water erodes the softer rock. Okay, but it cannot erode the hard rock. And this falling water, so that creates a deep pool here. So this is called as a plunge pool. So suppose even because this water, it has capacity even to erode hard rock, because water carries sediment, and due to this abrasive action of this carried sediment and this hard rock, the hard rock gets eroded. So many waterfalls, they move upstream. Okay, maybe a few centimeter per year, waterfalls move upstream because of this eroding capacity of the river. This plunge pool, because it is all this plunge pool is created here because it's acts like a cushion to the falling water. So this is a typical waterfall structure. So there is a hard rock here and softer rock, and there is a plunge pool. Okay. And in hydraulics, in hydraulic structure, I mean, fishways are an important hydraulic structure. In India, we are not giving too much importance, but in far Western countries, fishways are, I mean, a very hot topic for research, because we like, I mean, salmon fish, okay, for eating. But salmon fish, when they lay eggs, they move upstream, okay, where the flow velocity is less, where, I mean, this vegetation is there in the water. So in those areas, they try to lay their eggs, and these are called as spawning grounds. So generally these spawning grounds are in the upper reaches of the river. So the fish, they move from the downstream to the upstream, and they lay eggs there. Once they laid eggs, then they move downstream. So for, I mean, to make this happen movement, we need to provide fishways to preserve the ecosystem. So because nowadays rivers are, I mean, obstructed by dams, barrages, weirs, etc. So fish cannot move freely upstream and downstream. So to facilitate this movement, we need to provide fishways. So you can see that this is a fishway here. Okay. Generally, the fishways are provided with 1:20 slope. So fish can go both ways, upstream and as well as downstream. So this is a bypass fishway. There is a weir, you can see, which cannot facilitate fish to move up and down. So therefore, there is a fishway is provided here. Okay, because since it has taken detour, so the length is high, length is more. So therefore length is more. So frictional slope, that is HF by L, is less, and there is a control here, exit. So water is allowed to flow through here. So and to move fish, I mean from downstream to upstream, a notch is provided in the weir, notch is provided, so therefore there is more water available here, and that attracts fish. So fish moves through this fish passage and it moves upstream. So it crosses this weir. So most popular fishways are vertical slot fish. So this is a vertical slot fishway. So you can see that there is a dike here, small dike, and this flow is a zigzag fashion. So in this, the velocity will be low and depth is high because of this barrier. And since water is allowed to flow in zigzag fashion, so the velocity will be low, so fishes can move upstream and downstream. So therefore this vertical slot fishway is a you can say more popular fishway, and this is a natural rock ramp fishway. So you can see that there is a small weir here, and fish cannot go up, fish cannot cross from the downstream to upstream, okay, cannot cross this weir. So therefore there is a separate channel is provided by using rocks. So because here since the distance is more, so flow will be less and the friction is high, so therefore flow depth is high, so fish can easily move upstream and easily cross this weir structure. So these are conceptual figures. So next important topic in this sediment transport is bank erosion. This is a we can say a very serious problem in Assam, because Brahmaputra is cutting the banks. Thousands of hectares of agricultural land is gone because of this bank erosion. So just I'm going to discuss what are the types of bank erosion. So these are the important terms in bank erosion. So bank erosion, this is nothing but detachment, entrainment and removal of bank material as individual grains. Bank failure, so this is collapse of all or part of the bank in response to geotechnical instability. Bank retreat, so this is a recession of bank as a result of erosion. So bank advance, so this is opposite to bank retreat. So whereas river is depositing sediment and it is pulling the bank inside the river. Bank erodibility, so this is the ease with which bank material particles and aggregates can be detached. You can see in this figure, so this is a river bank. Before this erosion, the river bank is a couple of meters inside, but due to this bank erosion, you can see that there is an agricultural well and it damaged due to the this bank retreat. So not only this agricultural well, you can see that here this land is lost. Okay, so this is very serious problem, and one way to address this problem is to provide sheet piling. okay, are concrete, river banks. But banks run, river run for thousands of kilometers, so it's economically not feasible to provide concrete, bank. So therefore, generally we tackle the problem by locally addressing the issue. That means where the river is, aggressively cutting the bank, there we provide some dikes or, guide vanes or strengthening the bank with geotechnical engineering, etc. So bank erosion occurs through these processes. These are three important processes: subaerial process and fluvial erosion, mass failure. And bank erosion, it is got influenced by role of vegetation. So vegetation can increase bank erosion or decrease bank erosion. That I will discuss. So first I will discuss these three uh, types of bank erosion processes. So for estimating bank erosion, this is the widely accepted formula. So epsilon, that is bank erosion rate per unit bank area, that is equal KD into tau minus tau C power A, whereas tau C is critical shear stress, tau E is the boundary shear stress applied by the flow, and A is a empirical constant. KD is erodibility constant. This is also an empirical constant. And bank erosion is very complicated process, okay, because if you see the equation is very simple, but finding this KD and A, it is not easy, okay. They are specific to local and specific to sediment characteristics. So the subaerial processes. So here the what you say, the main physical process is this freeze and thaw. So mainly the subaerial processes, so they happen due to this temperature effects, because in mountainous, the subaerial processes generally they occur in the upper region of the river, that is in the mountainous regions. So where the temperature changes are quite high. So in the winter, the water in the voids that expands and loosening the this bank. So and it is easily eroded. Okay, so these subaerial processes, this is like a kind of a preparation for bank failure because of this freezing and thawing and cyclic temperature changes. The bank becomes loose, and at some point of time the bank fails. So other important processes of fluvial processes. So is fluvial processes, this is caused by the flow, okay, because due to the when the water next to the bank flows with small velocity because of no slip condition, okay. So due to this there is a turbulence, okay, and there is a shear stress, and once this shear stress exceeds the threshold shear stress of this bank material, then the bank erodes, okay. So this is called as a fluvial process. And this mass failure, this is mainly geotechnical failure of the bank, okay. This is because of pore water pressure and groundwater effect. Then when the slope exceeds the angle of repose, then this mass failure takes place. So the subaerial processes, they are mainly because of climate, affected by climate, and fluvial processes, they're mainly because of local shear stress distribution and stream power and secondary currents. And mass failure, this is because of bank angle and bank composition, bank height and pore water pressure. These are main types of banks. This is a non-cohesive bank. So non-cohesive bank is mainly with sand and gravel. Okay, so cohesive bank. So this is mainly with formed with clay. So you can see that this non-cohesive bank, because its angle of repose is small and the slope is small, whereas cohesive bank, it can withstand even steep slopes. Composite banks, okay, so generally in composite banks, at the toe it is a granular material, and above this granular material there is a cohesive material. Similarly, this is another composite. Here granular material which is cemented, and granular material without cemented, and then cohesive material. So the failures in these different types of banks are different. So I'm going to show some different types of bank erosion processes. You can see that here the slope of the bank is almost close to the angle of repose, because this dashed line is angle of repose. But where the flow is in contact with the slope, so because of the erosion, this is, you can see that it has become flattened. So this is called as shallow failure. So next is planar failure. So in the planar failure, here you can see the slope of the bank is more than the angle of repose. So therefore you can see that entire this extra material over this angle of repose that slided along this plane. So this is called as plane failure. And you can see here because of this is a kind of a cohesive material, you can see the slope is very steep compared to the angle of repose, and therefore the tension crack, and due to the tension crack, this entire mass, it slided into the river. Okay, so this is called as planar slab failure. And in the fourth, in this called rotational failure. So in the rotational failure, it is similar to the planar failure, but here that surface of this failure is a arc or circular. So usually these rotational failures, they occur in cohesive banks. And again here you can see that cohesive bank, and due to the rotational failure, because you can see that there is a hard surface here. Okay, above there is a cohesive, and above this hard surface, this because of this tension crack, this cohesive bank, it actually failed, and this is called as rotational failure, because this failure surface is a circular. And here you can see that this is again in cohesive bank, because of the groundwater effect or pore water effect, and this part of the bank it failed as a rotational failure. So these are another two types, and here you can see that this is a composite material, okay, sand and gravel, and above there is a cohesive material. So due to the flow, the sand gravel eroded, and there is a slab formation here. And so with the time, there is undercut into this cohesive soil, and part of this bank, it failed. Okay, so this is composite. This is called a composite bank failure. And another bank failure, it is similar, but instead of that overhung part, that entire part is slided into the river. So this is another type of bank failure. So these are some figures. This is a cohesive bank. Okay, so you can see that mass failure took place here. So this is a layered bank with a substrate of clay. So you can see that here, this is a clay. These are two layers. This is a clay and this is a granular material. So this is another. This is a rotational failure along the bank of Mekong River in Vietnam. So this is a bank failure due to subaerial processes, because again these subaerial processes, they occur in the higher young what you say, in the young region of this river. That means at higher altitude, where just river is forming, in those areas this bank failure occurs because of the subaerial process, because of the cold climate. So this is a mass failure in Sea River, Italy. So this is highly unstable bank in Sea River. So next important phenomena is bridges cover. Okay. Bridges cover is the removal of sediments such as sand, rocks from around bridge abutments or piers. So 60% of bridges failed because of piers cover. I am showing you some figures. You see these bridge foundations, bridge piers, they are made with shallow foundation. Okay, so whenever the water flows around this bridge pier, so because of the turbulence and mixing, the soil erodes at the around this bridge pier. Slowly with the time, that gets deepened, and finally the foundation surfaces. Okay, it goes up to the foundation, and due to that the bearing capacity will be decreased, and ultimately the bridge will be failed. So you can see that these are all bridge failures. So in the around the world, more than 60% of bridges failed because of this piers cover. So the main agents of this piers cover are stagnation of the flow. So what is stagnation of the flow? Because in front of at the nose of the pier, so water is stopped. Okay, so that is called stagnation. So then there is a stagnation pressure. and non-uniform velocity distribution. Because in a river, I mean, if you look at velocity profile, it is non-uniform, okay? Because velocity at the bed is 0 and the velocity increases gradually. Then the outer layer, the velocity is almost constant, okay? So this is because of this non-uniform velocity distribution, the stagnation pressures will be high near the free surface. So therefore, there is a downward flow. Then, because this mostly the flows in rivers and pipes or in canals, it is a turbulent fluid flow. So in the turbulent fluid flow is always 3D. That means the three components U, V, W are different. So when this flow traverses around this bridge pier, there is a bone layer separation, because since it's three-dimensional flow, the bone layer separation is three-dimensional. Then behind the bridge pier, what wake vortices develop. Okay, I'm going to show the figures so you will better understand. Then at the bottom of near the bed, Arshu vortex develops, and at the free surface, because of the downward flow, the surface roller is created. Then, because of the shape of the pier, if it is a rectangular or square shaped pier, then edge effect is also predominant. So once the flow exits the bridge pier, then there is a flow expansion. So this is also one reason for scouring. So you can see that this figure, so these are the streamlines of fluid particles shown. So you can see near the bed, the streamlines are circling, okay, and the circle shape is like a horseshoe. So these are called horseshoe vortex. And you can see that at the top, the streamlines, they traverse around this pier, and there is a rotation of this fluid here because of the obstruction of the flow. These are called as wake vortices. So the wake vortices, they will be so they shed, okay, the wake vortices shed and they move downstream, okay. So and so in this figure it is horseshoe vortex and wake vortices are shown. So these are wake vortices, okay, they are shedding. This figure clearly explains. So these are horseshoe vortex at the bottom, and there is a downward flow. Then wake vortices are shown in this plane view. Because of the obstruction, there is a what you call vacuum created here. So due to that, the fluid is rushing into this vacuum, and there is a eddy is formed. So this is called as wake vortex. And at the near the free surface, surface rollers are formed. Okay, the surface rollers are similar to the horseshoe vortex. So you can see, you can clearly visualize, because when there is a circular motion of the fluid at the bed, that erodes. Okay, you can see that here this is a clockwise rotation of the fluid. So when it is clockwise rotate, when it is indulging in this clockwise rotation, it erodes the bed, okay, and carries the sediment to the downstream. And you can see wake vortex here, because behind this pier there is a velocity effect because of this vacuum created by this pier. And here the flow is very lethargic. The pressure is very low behind this bridge pier because of this wake. So since the flow has a very low energy here, so whatever the sediment eroded at the nose of the pier gets deposited here. So here this pier is rectangular, so therefore the edge vortices also created. These are edge vortices. So turbulent fluid flow. So what is turbulent fluid flow? It consists of full of eddies, or we can say the flow is chaotic, random, and velocities are fluctuating, and it is full of eddies. Okay, and due to this fluctuating velocities, because due to these fluctuating velocities, it erodes. This is a figure you can see with the time, the bed is eroded at the nose of the pier. So here, and slowly this material is deposited here. You can see the depth of the scour is ds. So if suppose here the foundation of pier is below this depth, therefore here the pier is safe. But suppose if the foundation is within this ds, then the bearing capacity will be low, so the pier will lean and then bridge will collapse. So but earlier there was not, there was not sufficient understanding of this scouring phenomena. So therefore the bridges constructed earlier were mostly with shallow foundation, rested on shallow foundation. Therefore the old bridges are in danger. Of course, if you look at railways or roadways, they are taking care of I'm going to explain what are the methods they are adopting to safeguard the foundation of these old bridges. But for new bridges, government is going for a deep foundation, that is pile foundation. Okay, so in pile foundation, it's a deep foundation, so they are safe with the bridge, pier scour. You can see this is the average velocity profile. Flow is from left side to right side. So you can see just upstream of the pier, the velocity is 0. Okay, velocity is decreased to 0, and immediately behind this pier, velocity is picking up again after certain distance, maybe depends on like 100 times of this dia of pier or 150 times dia of pier. Even it takes more distance to get back to normal flow conditions. But you can see, so there is a velocity defect in this whole region. So the velocity defect that makes the flow lethargic here. So the velocities will be low, pressure will be low, and buoyancy will be low. So the eroded material from the nose is deposited in this region. So to avoid bridge failure, countermeasures have to be adopted. So these are the important countermeasures: armoring devices. Okay, so armoring device is nothing but riprap. So this is an experimental pier. You can see that it is protected with riprap. Okay, so once this stone, it is pitched with stones, the scour will be less. Then flow altering devices. So flow altering devices is one is this armored plate. Okay. So you can see that by adopting this armored plate, the scour is less. And another is a splitter plate. Okay, these are all flow altering devices. Generally, the guide banks are provided for abutments so that gradually, attracting the flow. So therefore, there's less turbulence near the abutment and less mixing. So therefore, less scour. And last resort is foundation modification. That is okay. Foundation modification is going for deep foundation from a shallow foundation. So next important topic is sediment transport. Okay. So in sediment transport, so we tackle this question: how sediment moves in response to flowing water. So the conditions that will transport sediments are needed for engineering problem. So, so when there is a sediment transport is taking place, then we have to maintain this channel. We have to maintain the channel, and so this is a flow between two plates where bottom plate is fixed and top plate is moved with velocity u. Okay, so when there is a equilibrium condition develops, that is when the velocity reaches a constant velocity u, then we can write the shear stress at the bottom plate, so that we can write it as tau is equal mu into du by dy. So where du by dy is velocity gradient. So here we are considering only laminar flow. So this du by dy is nothing but rate of shear strain and tau is shear stress. So they are related with the fluid property, that is mu. So we can write tau shear stress is equal mu into this velocity gradient, and from this equation we can derive velocity. So by integrating we can get velocity is equal tau by mu y plus c. Okay, so tau is the shear stress at bottom plate, and y is the distance between the plates, so mu is dynamic viscosity. So by applying boundary condition, that no slip boundary condition at the bottom plate, we can get u is equal tau by mu y. So u is equal tau by mu y. So here the velocity varies linearly from 0 at the bottom plate, maximum at the highest position, and the applied force so increases, so does the velocity at every point above the lower plate, because tau is the maximum near the bottom plate. So therefore the velocity will be 0 at the lower plate, and the viscosity increases the velocity at any point above the lower plate. So what is this? I mean, the velocity is 0 at the bottom plate and the velocity increases and the velocity is maximum at the top plate. So you can see that this is a laminar flow. So flow is taking place as a layers. So in between layers, there is a shear stress tau. And this tau is nothing but momentum. Okay. So momentum transferred between the two layers. So let's take one open channel flow example. So you can see that the channel bed is inclined at theta, and we can take a fluid element which is y distance above the bed, and this fluid element, it has got dimensions d minus y and 1 comma 1. So let us, this is right as z direction. So in z direction, the fluid element has d minus y size, and streamwise direction, and then lateral direction, that is perpendicular to the this figure. The size of this element is a unit. Okay. So so the units are d minus y, 1 into 1. Okay. So theta is the slope, and tau y, because this fluid element is moving, so therefore there is a layer below this fluid element. The stress between the fluid element and below layer is tau y. So we can write, because it is a uniform open channel flow, so the gravitational force is balanced by the shear stress between the element and surrounding fluid. Okay, so therefore the gravitational force, we can write it as gamma d minus y into sine theta. So this is the right side is the gravitational component, and left side is the shear stress. So from this relation, we can get equation for velocity. Okay. Suppose we take y is equal to 0, then the shear stress, that is equal to the bed shear stress tau naught. So that is equal rho g d sine theta. So tau y is rho g d minus y sine theta. So tau y is nothing but mu into du by dy. So this is from the Newtonian fluid condition. So we can write tau is equal mu into dy by dy here. So then finally we can write du by dy is equal gamma sine theta d minus y by mu. So let us integrate to get velocity u. So when integrate u is du is equal integration of this gamma sine theta d minus y by mu dy. So then we can write uy is equal gamma sine theta by mu integration of d minus y dy plus c. Then we integrate this term, this becomes yd minus y square by 2 plus c. So when we apply no slip condition at the boundary, then we'll get uy is equal gamma sine theta by mu yd minus y square by 2. So this is the equation for velocity distribution in a laminar open channel flow, because the assumption in this in the derivation is laminar flow, because we have taken tau is equal mu into dou u by dou y, which is only applicable for laminar flow, and this equation is a parabolic. Okay, because this is a parabolic equation. So from this we can say that in laminar flow or a flat plate or laminar flow in open channel is a parabolic velocity, as a parabolic velocity distribution. So you know the definition of steady flow. That means the flow velocity or flow depth, they are not changing over time, whereas uniform flow definition is, so either velocity or flow depth are not changing along the channel, and the laminar flow that it is based on the Reynolds number. Okay, so if Reynolds number below the threshold, then it is a laminar flow. So what is the threshold, that will be presented in the next slide. So it is a different for different type of flow phenomena. For pipe flow, the threshold Reynolds number is 2000. So 2000 below flow is laminar, but for open channel flow it is 500. So if Reynolds number is below 500, flow is laminar. So you can see that in the laminar flow, the shear stress distribution is linear and velocity distribution is parabolic. So now here the flow classification, that is either a laminar or a turbulent flow. So that is proposed by Reynolds. Okay, so he has done an experiment and then he proposed a non-dimensional number which is called as Reynolds number. Okay, so I'm going to explain this Reynolds experiment. You must have done, I mean, you know this Reynolds experiment, but I'm revisiting it again. Okay, so this is a water tank, and this is a dye. Okay, so dye is released into this pipe connected to this tank. So when the flow velocity is low, you can see that dye followed a straight path. Once we increase velocity and we bring, I mean, in the flow into transitional zone, then dye followed a wavy path, and with if we further increase the velocity and when the flow is turbulent flow, we can see dye rapidly mixed throughout the fluid. And streamlines are shown here. So in the laminar flow, the streamlines are straight, whereas in transitional flow, the streamlines are not parallel, but they are wavy. And in turbulent fluid flow, you can see that the streamlines are intersecting each other. So there is no definite pattern of stream flow in the turbulent fluid flow. And Reynolds proposed a Reynolds number, which is a ratio of inertial force to viscous force. Okay, so R is Reynolds number, that is equal to rho ud by mu. So this formula is obtained by dimensional analysis. So in this formula, rho is mass density of fluid, u is the velocity of fluid, velocity of flow, d is diameter of this is a length scale, and mu is dynamic viscosity. So mu is dynamic viscosity and kinematic viscosity, nu is equal mu by rho. So therefore we can write Reynolds number is equal ud by nu. And so So for laminar flow, that is Reynolds number is less than 1000, less than 2000 in pipe flow. We can establish laminar flow, and here the streamlines are parallel to each other and they're straight. So in the transitional flow, it is developed for Reynolds numbers between 2000 to 4000 in pipe flow, and streamlines are wavy. They are parallel but wavy. And once we increase the flow rate and when we develop turbulent fluid flow, so for Reynolds number more than 4000, we can see the streamlines without any pattern and they are intersecting each other. So this is turbulent fluid flow. Okay, so these Reynolds numbers, 2000 threshold Reynolds number, this is only applicable for pipe flow. Flow over flat plate, it will be around 10 power 5, and for open channel flow it is 500. Because here why we are discussing this laminar flow and turbulent flow, because the flows we are dealing with in civil engineering are 99% turbulent, except the flow in our veins. This is our blood flow is a laminar flow, but flow in drinking water, pipelines, in water distribution networks, pipelines, and flows in canals, rivers, flow in drainage channels. Everywhere it is a turbulent flow. So the turbulent flow characteristic is mixing. So that mixing, during the mixing, the eddy is formed. Eddy is a rotational or flow, and these eddies, depending upon their size, they have got energy to scour. Also, they increase friction and drag, so which are having a lot of important influences in our civil engineering, because if the turbulent flow, the friction will be high. So this is the visual figures. So in the laminar flow, we can see the die is following a straight path. In the transitional, so it is wavy and slightly diffusing. And the turbulent flow, it is completely mixed here. So here is a small formula. So given two pipes with diameters 10 centimeter and 1 meter. So here what velocities will the flow in each pipe becomes turbulent. Okay, so we know the Reynolds number 2000, we know the formula, and kinematic viscosity is around 1 into 10 power minus 6 meters per second. Then we need to determine U, D is given. Okay, so from these calculations, so we found that in small pipe, the velocity is at 2 centimeter per second velocity, the flow becomes turbulent. Our flow becomes transitional. And for 1 meter dia pipe, at 2 millimeter per second. So you see, as the length scale increases, the velocity decreases for getting a transitional flow. So in our pipe flows, for bigger diameter pipes, the flow velocity will be around 1 meter per second. Whereas small diameter pipes like 10 centimeters, the flow will be around 1 meter per second. So the flow is highly turbulent. And in open channel flow, the velocities are around less than 1 meter per second. generally the flow velocity in our laboratory flumes, the flow velocities are around 30 centimeter per second. So with the 30 meter per second velocity also the flow is highly turbulent. So next important number is Froude number. Non-dimensional number is Froude number. So Froude number is a ratio between inertial force to gravitational force. So it is simplification is F is equal U by square root of GD. And F less than 1 is subcritical flow, F more than 1 is critical flow. So this subcritical flow and critical flow, so they are important because of whether the disturbance moves either upstream or downstream. So in a subcritical flow, if you create any disturbance, it propagates in both directions. That is, the surface wave, it propagates in both directions. But whereas in supercritical flow, the flow velocity is more than the wave velocity. Therefore, the surface wave cannot propagate in upstream direction. So therefore, in supercritical flow, any disturbance created downstream, it will not propagate upstream direction. So in reverse, the sediment is, bed load transported as bed forms. So if Froude number is less than 1, this is called as lower region flow. So in lower region flow, dunes are created, and these dunes, they are not in phase with the water surface. So you can see that at the bed, the dunes are wavy. There is a star slope and a lee slope, but water surface is not disturbed by the dunes. But whereas in upper region flow, that is supercritical flow, anti-dunes are created. So the anti-dunes, they are in phase with the surface. So you can see the anti-dunes are in sinusoidal waves, and whereas the water surface is also in tune with the bed, that is also in the sinusoidal wave. Because these dunes and anti-dunes, they are very important, because during the floods, the bed load mainly transported in the form of either dunes or anti-dunes, or depending upon the Froude number. So earlier we have derived this equation. Velocity is equal gamma sine theta by mu into yd by minus y square by 2. This is for laminar flow. Okay. So you can see the velocity distributions are shown for laminar flow and turbulent flow, and this is highly turbulent flow. So you see in the laminar flow, the velocity distribution is mild and it is kind of a parabolic. Whereas in the turbulent fluid flow, the velocity gradient is very high near the bed, but most of the depth velocity is kind of uniform. Whereas in highly turbulent flow, same, the velocity gradient will be very high near the bed, and velocity is almost uniform. So this velocity gradient near the bed, where the velocity gradient is very high, that is called as viscous sublayer. Okay. So since you know, tau is equal mu into du by dy. So du by dy is very high in the turbulent fluid flow. Therefore, the shear stress will be very high in turbulent flow. So once shear stress is increasing, means friction is high. So the why the velocity distribution is almost uniform in the outer layer in turbulent fluid flow. This is because of the mixing. Because in the turbulent fluid flow is characterized by intense mixing. So due to that mixing, the momentum is mixed. Therefore, the velocity is kind of uniform in the outer layer. So turbulent fluid flows. Turbulent flows, they are made of two regions. One region is viscosity dominated and other region is turbulence dominated. So viscosity dominated means this is called as viscous sublayer. So where the flow is laminar. So away from this viscous sublayer, flow is fully turbulent. Okay. So on for laminar flow, we know the shear stress is equal tau is equal mu into du by dy. But for turbulent flow, because shear stress has two components. One is contributed within this viscous sublayer and other is outside the viscous sublayer. So therefore, the shear stress at any depth is expressed as viscous shear stress plus turbulent shear stress. So turbulent shear stress is expressed as N du by dy, not N, is eta, eta du by dy. Eta is called as eddy viscosity. Okay, so this eddy viscosity is function of the flow property. Whereas this viscous shear stress, tau is equal mu du by dy, where mu is the fluid property. And in turbulent flows, viscous shear stress can be neglected because as Reynolds number increases, this turbulent shear stress is orders of magnitude more than viscous shear stress. Therefore, this is like 100 or 1000 times more than viscous shear stress. So we can safely neglect viscous shear stress in turbulent fluid flows. We have derived equation for velocity distribution in laminar open channel flow, but whereas for turbulent fluid flows, another equation is called the log law is developed. Okay, so log law is a very popular velocity distribution equation for turbulent fluid flow. Okay, so here this equation is given for velocity distribution for hydraulically rough flow. Okay, so uy by u star is equal to 8.5 plus 2.3 by kappa log y by y naught. So this y naught is called as zero velocity line, whereas kappa is called as von Karman constant. So in any turbulent fluid flow, so velocity distribution is given by log law, which is proposed by von Karman. Okay, so it's a very popular equation to finding velocities in turbulent fluid flow. Okay, so here this zero velocity line, that y naught is determined as d by 30. Okay, so this is obtained by, this is proposed by experimentally, whereas d is the grain size. Okay, so u star is in this equation, u star is friction velocity. It is also called as shear velocity. It is a hypothetical value. U star is a hypothetical value which reflects friction or which reflects shear stress at the bed, because shear stress tau is equal rho u star square. Okay, so here the tau naught is bed shear stress, that is equal rho into u star square, and once u star is known, we can get F value also. F value, N value, many things can obtain from this. Many things related to friction can be obtained from this U star value. So tau naught for uniform flow, we can write tau naught is equal gamma d sine theta. Okay. So d is for pipe. D is the hydraulic diameter. Actually, for open channel flow, it is not D. It is written as R, capital R, that is hydraulic radius. Okay. For open channel flow, it is gamma R sine theta. So we know in open channel flows, the average velocity occurs at 0.6 depth from the free surface or 40% depth above the boundary. So from this equation, we can derive equation for average velocity. So U bar is equal, by substituting y is equal 0.4 d, we can get equation for average velocity in a open channel flow. So what is the use of this equation is, by knowing this U star value and by knowing y naught value, we can get the velocity, flow velocity at any depth. So that is the use of the log law. హలో ప్రొఫెసర్ శ్రీనివాస్ గారు, సో ఇది 4 o'clock అయిపోయింది. సో నేను మరి స్టాప్ చేయాలా నేను? తర్వాత ఏదో బాగా డిస్టర్బెన్స్ వస్తుంది. ఓకే, ఐఎమ్ స్టాపింగ్ ఇట్ హియర్, బట్ ఐ విల్ షేర్ దిస్ నోట్స్ విత్ యూ. So dear participants, thank you very much. Now, I mean, it is going to be 4 o'clock. So still I have covered only like 50% material. So I will share this a PowerPoint presentation with Professor Srinivas. So you can get it from him. Because turbulent flow is the main reason for sediment transport. So therefore, before getting into like sediment transport modeling, we need to know the basics of turbulent fluid flow. So therefore, I'm covering this. But since time is over, so I'm stopping it here. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So participants, if you have any questions, you can ask. Please post your question in the chat box. Otherwise,
Okay.
you can unmute yourself and you can ask.
So any questions? Okay.
Okay, sir. I think it seems.
Okay. Okay, anyway, I am sharing this so they can
Yeah,
go
yeah.
through, and if they have any questions later on, they can post to
Yeah,
me.
that can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you.
once again. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot to you all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So participants, we will close the session now, and we will meet tomorrow again sharp at 10 o'clock. Thank you all.